Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to day 3 of 4 EUS Challenger Series number 18 with the first best of 3 of today, which is Dark Passage versus Pulse eSports. I'm also Pulse, and I'm joined by Stress. How's it going, man?
Hello, it's going good. Glad to be here. EUS Challenger Series number 18. I'm so excited for this one.
Yeah, already in its 18th series is kind of crazy, but the bans are coming in thick and fast. Kha'Zix, Kassadin, Fresh, Yasuo, Ziggs, and Elise already on the playing field.
Yeah, that's some pretty fast bans out already, but there's a couple of noteworthy things in these bans. There's been a few mid laners banned out here that are fairly strong. Kassadin, Yasuo, and Ziggs all have seen a lot of play recently in LCS. Kassadin not so much because he seems to be banned all the time, as you'd expect with Kassadin. He's still pretty strong, so a lot of mid lane focus recently on these bans, and it tends to be because a lot of the mid laners that are currently in the meta, such as Gragas, who I know has been locked in, and LeBlanc, who's been locked in response as well, have a lot of mobility and they're fairly difficult to gank. So if you can remove a lot of those mid laners that will like to just be able to safely farm, you actually switch focus down in towards the bottom lane with junglers, and that's where we're seeing a lot of the skirmishes take place these days.
It's also interesting because when a lot of teams play against Dark Passage in particular, they put a lot of emphasis onto their playmaker Fabulous, so you just have all these top lane bans from the opposing team, and because top lane is so strong in this current meta, you've got like Shyvana, Mundo, even Trundle as like kind of counter meta, then you just have Fabulous sitting there being like, oh, I have all these champions to choose from, so that, you know, putting that focus somewhere else. And the follow-up will be that LeBlanc and the Vi, so still leaving that top lane open, just see what Pulse respond with.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of Vi play recently. A lot of just junglers that are very strong in a lot of the aspects of the games, have decent ganks, and a lot of it's to do with the way that the jungle gold now is distributed with the added conservation and of course the passives that got changed around on the spirit items in the previous patch. There's a lot more survivability, a lot more gold in the jungle as well, ever since the preseason patch, on junglers such as Vi, who like to have that hybrid of ganking and farming as well. So you manage to get a lot of gold out of the jungle, and it makes them really tanky and really strong as the game goes on.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why you do get junglers, even if they can't get those ganks, and they can just revert to that jungle path and still be relevant when it hits that mid-game switch. But the response will be Lee Sin, which is another aggressive jungler, and kind of scales off more towards the late game, more of like a picking champion, but will do a lot of damage as well, even in the mid and early games stages of the game. And Leona as well is picked up first before the AD carry.
Yeah, now Leona and Annie are some of the more highly contested supports right now. We're seeing so much of Leona and Annie in the LCS, and Jack mentioned yesterday in the LCS that I believe he said that Annie has a good lane against Leona, but I find it can actually be somewhat of a skill matchup because of the way the engages work, is both really just want to engage on the AD carry, stun them, and deal as much damage. So it's very much down to the synergy in the bottom lanes when you have a Leona and Annie lane, as Annie does have the extra range on the stun, but Leona has that extra engage range more often because she doesn't have to burn flash.
And this is exactly what we're going to see here. That's the Annie locked in on top of the Caitlyn, so we're going to see just that skill matchup. And we do often see Leona picked up after banning Fresh, or like Fresh has been taken away, because Fresh can flay that Leona backwards. And again, there's a lot of skill to that, but when you get into the kind of top echelons of the Challenger scene, like these two teams, then it's worth just making sure that you have that in the back of your mind. The Hover over Lucian is coming out, and the Hover over Ashe as well, which is a bit funky.
Yeah, I wouldn't be... I am a little behind on the stream, so if it has already been locked in, I do apologise, but I really wouldn't assume it would be an Ashe here.
No, they're swapping through a couple different picks, and I'm not really sure where he's going to stop. It's just going over many different champions, but Lucian would make a lot of sense. Indeed, it has been locked in, and Ashe hasn't been changed just yet, so with 2 seconds on the clock, we're going to wait for it, and that's the Ashe locked in. I'm going to assume that's a placeholder. They have jumped out of the lobby, so it will be a placeholder. I'm going to quickly ask what that is, and we'll jump back into the champion select. It was Renekton. Okay, that makes a lot more sense than top lane Ashe.
Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. Top lane Ashe, I can't imagine would be the best thing in the world. Ashe obviously lacks mobility, so top laners do like to be able to get away.
Yeah. And Dark Passage have responded with the Karma is what they want as their last pick. So that's kind of interesting as well, because they already had Annie picked up and that Caitlyn. I would
And
suspect,
LeBlanc.
and LeBlanc as well. Yeah, they wouldn't want really to replace that Annie because Annie works fine against that Leona, and Karma just opens it up for her to be engaged upon by Leona. So, where do you think this is going to be placed? Could it be a jungle Karma?
I'm a little, not confused because I don't see that Vi would work in a lane capacity. Her strengths are purely in the jungle. Her mobility, her ability to gank with her level 6. We will get champion select back on screen for you as soon as possible, guys. Looks like we've got a slight bug, but I'm very worried that with a Karma here, they're relying a lot on mobility and a lot on burst potential. That front line is non-existent outside of Vi, and Vi wants to go so far into the team fight that it just can become difficult to peel for your backline. So I'm a little bit worried when you've got champions like Renekton and Lee Sin who are really going to aim for your backline, that Vi might be a little too gung-ho for a no frontline top laner.
Yeah, like, you don't pick Vi to be your front line, you pick Vi to be jumping on your opponent's carries, and just to take them out of the fight. But if you don't have that, they're very all-in composition that doesn't seem to have any sort of, like, fail-safe if the fight starts going in the opposing direction. So, it seems like if they disengage, which they can because Karma is great at just keeping your opponents away, especially if you chain that into like a Talisman of Ascension, which you can sometimes get on your supports, then they can just maybe pick the fights that they want. But it's still a composition that is fairly funky. Something we haven't considered is top lane Karma, and because these are being locked in very quickly and most likely in the lanes they're going to be in, fabulous. This is not something I've seen them on before.
I mean, he wouldn't be the first person to do top lane Karma. I believe Darien did it for a while. We've also seen Fnatic run it. I think Soaz has run top lane Karma in Season 3. Karma's a champion that a lot of players have said has an excellent kit that almost has everything you need from a jungler or a support. Top lane is kind of similar. You get a lot more gold, and you have a bit more impact in the mid game, but I'm just wondering how it's going to work here, because unless they can get Naru fed on LeBlanc, I feel like their damage is going to be too slow for their team composition's weaknesses to be overcame. It's going to be difficult unless Naru can blow somebody up very quickly for Dark Passage to survive through team fights that go more than a couple of seconds.
Okay guys, we're going to see exactly how this team composition fares in the game, but we are going to jump to a quick commercial break, and when we get back we'll be in the first game of today, which will be Dark Passage versus Pulse eSports. Don't go anywhere. Hello and welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Dark Passage and Pulse Esports. This is the first best of three we have today of a total of 3 best of threes, which is way more than we have usually. But I'm Pulse, I'm joined by Stress for the first game. How's it going?
Good, it's going good, and 3 best of 3s is a big treat for today. I'm looking forward to all 3 of them as well because we've got some great games. I mean, normally we get 2, and I'm like, at the end of the day, there's not quite enough to fulfill all of the League of Legends, but. However, we got 3 today, and we are unpausing the game. So we are into game 1 here between Dark Passage and Pulse, and Naru just keeping 760 on his toes there.
Yeah, he was actually going to go ahead and recall, but I feel like it may have been a bait just to land that extra auto attack. Doesn't really mean too much, but it will at least force NIQ to jump back to base, and we're going to see a more passive start here, which is quite usual for Season 4. We don't have too many invades, and if we do, then it's like it's usually smaller or very, very delayed invades, and often off the back of maybe a lane swap up. But nowadays we just see people being quite passive.
Yep, people being pretty passive all across the board. We've seen a couple of deep wards coming out of teams. I mean, I think you look at the OGN finals, there were certain times where SKTs certainly managed to get some good early wards off in the jungle, which, you know, is something that you can do if you're very confident as a team, but I think these 2 teams won't have been able to scare each other quite as much as 2 OGN finals teams, so wouldn't be expecting too many wards to come out here in the early game.
So we've been talking a little about Dark Passage's composition in general and how it's very different. And specifically looking at like the Karma picked up against Renekton, like top lanes in general are usually beefy top laners who just go toe to toe. After a certain stage they get so tanky they can't do anything to each other anymore. Sometimes they jump out of lane, or sometimes they just both stay up there to kind of neutralize that out. But Karma definitely changes the pace of the game, and she'll want to join her team earlier. So we won't have this like top lane stagnation that we usually have.
Okay, so here's the problem I see with the Karma Renekton lane is Jokies. I'm looking in this lane for him to do a particular all-in at level 2, which Renekton has been known to do recently. You can see there's a lot of trading across the map, but essentially if you can beat your lane opponent to level 2, which Jokies has, and have Rage, you can all-in the opponent, but he landed inside that Q there from Karma, has taken damage, so it's a little bit too much damage on him to be able to all-in and get a kill at level 2.
And because of that all-in potential, I'm actually taking a quick look at the flashing red of NIQ. He's getting beaten around by Naru, but in the top lane, usually if you're expecting that level 2, why not go for the tether? Because that's a great tool to definitely keep away a Renekton, but Fabulous looking quite confident, just not even needing that, putting a point in the shield to mitigate even more damage. So in his top lane, it looks like Karma's just bullying Jokies around. He's actually going all in for this one. Doesn't decide to go straight under the turret, but Ruthless Predator doing a lot of damage. Oh, Lee Sin comes in from the side, forces out the flash.
Yeah, that's a really important flash to be down now, but engage in the bottom.
Yeah, Lendix has jumped onto the Annie. Annie trying to juke forwards, back into Warlight, gets picked up, and First Blood will fall to a Lennox. Flash forwards from Phoenix, picks up another. Meanwhile, in the mid lane, Naru is getting chunked by NIQ. Kicker's coming in from the backside, looking to land the Q onto the clone. Does he choose to follow up? In fact, he'll just walk all the way around the side, not going to be fooled by that. Naru doesn't have too many places to run. He is LeBlanc, he does have this distortion off of cooldown, 2 points in that, in fact. And his best bet is to try and execute. Gonna go the long route, lands the Q. Warlight has come back from base, didn't even matter.
Yeah, not really any way of getting away from that. And a kill up in the top lane as well. He looked like Fabulous just managed to bait Renekton in. That's a really important kill and really accentuates Karma's kit. It was a point I was going to get to, was if Renekton tries to go all in too early and Karma can survive through it, he'll take a lot of damage in return. And that tether will really start to lock him down in lane. And it's a good start out for Dark Passage, but both teams have picked up kills in across the different lanes.
Yeah, action all over the Rift, but Karma is probably one of the best trading champions in the game because not only does she have a shield, she also has a slowdown, and if you're against a melee champion, then they're going to have to run away from you while you CC them. And then on top of that, you have the extra healing from Focus Resolve, and actually the renewal part of that when you have the Mantra bonus, and it's absolutely devastating. It's like 40% of missing HP, even at rank 1, so you don't have to put any more points in it.
And 760 in that mid lane is constantly getting taken very low. You can see he started with the flask to try and sustain a little bit through the through that lane, as it's a pretty difficult lane for Gragas with that LeBlanc, and you can see Crystal trying to get around into this bottom lane, and there's some potency with Vi out in the early game where you can get the flash vault breakers, and that has been spotted out by the ward. But her peak really comes at level 6. She has a lot of potency early, but still, as she hits level 6, that's the point where Vi really almost is unstoppable in ganking.
Yeah, and Vi probably has the most easy time in mid lane where she just needs to move in. Sometimes it might just need to be Vault Breaker into a certain battery, and it's almost a guaranteed kill with LeBlanc burst on top of that, even against someone like Gragas. And we're seeing a lot of LeBlanc recently, usually in compositions that has more follow-up. This time Crystal Map's gonna find himself, kick us in the jungle, just gonna push him backwards, not gonna go too deep onto that, but we're seeing a lot more LeBlanc, and we're seeing a lot more Lee Sin looking to counter jungle Crystal Meth.
And we're seeing a lot of damage in that top lane already out in this game. And Jokies is in a little bit of a tricky situation because he constantly wants to keep up his farm, of course, because if he falls too far behind on farm, Renekton isn't the best scaling champion. There have been a couple of tweaks recently, and I think there are a few still to come on Renekton, but he doesn't scale the absolute best. He still does very well, but especially against this kind of composition, he needs to get tanky pretty fast, because if they're in a situation where LeBlanc and Karma can really chunk people down, they're in a tricky spot.
Yeah, Lending's gonna find himself Holy Phoenix in the bottom lane, but that's just a bait for Kickers, who's coming from the backside. Don't choose to go any further, though. Not too tanky at this early stage in the game, and the ward was expended.
Yeah, it was a nice attempt there out of Kickers to try and get in around the backside, but I mean, Holy Phoenix didn't have flash, wasn't even forced to barrier though, so I mean, a good attempt keeping up that pressure in the early game against a Vi who certainly doesn't want to be in positions to trade against Lee Sin early, but really there are other lanes that are requiring a bit of help as well here, and Kikis is in a tricky spot here because he's trying to get ganks in the bottom lane, and top lane's been shoved in with a big wave.
Yeah, and I can already see the Bulgarian fans, or not necessarily Bulgarian, but it was a Bulgarian tournament on Fest I was casting where Dark Passage just brought home the #1 spot, and they're a well-known team in kind of the eastern sides of Europe, and we do often see the Fab chants coming out, which is fantastic to see. But they haven't actually tried to shut down Fabulous, who's had quite a nice time in top lane, just bullying the Renekton around.
And I wonder where we're going to see the first Dragon players. You can see Gragas starting to roam down towards the bottom. A pick here would open up the Dragon for Pulse Esports. Can they land a stun?
Lennox went forwards, flashed into the Shield of Daybreak. Gragas' barrel comes through, completely whiffs, but it won't even matter. Warlight's going to pick up that kill. In fact, it will be NIQ who just walks in, scumbags, misses all the skill shots, and auto-attacks to Caitlyn to death.
Now, does that actually open the Dragon area? Because Naru is stalking around this, trying to wait for one member of Pulse to come into the Dragon Pit, but Jokies actually picks up a kill in the top lane as he had Dominus. Here comes the Assault and Battery.
Yeah, on to Warlight, has jumped out with the Relentless Pursuit, but Naru from the mid lane should be able to pick this one up, has been interrupted by Elendix. Solar Flare comes down, lands the stun onto Annie. Kickers has come back in, picks up one, looking for the second onto Annie. Naru jumps forwards, needs to pick up this kill. Barrier comes out, it will be enough with the stun and the combination. Kickers follows through, using that Resonating Strike, and doesn't choose to go any further. Naru just zoning these guys away.
The 3-man Solar Flare turned that from a certain kill into a trade, but Elendix is in trouble.
They're going to go for round 2. Lands that Resonating Strike once again onto Naru. Elendix is dropping low. The Eclipse has been popped for their extra stat. Doesn't land onto a minion. Doesn't get the extra timer on that. And Holy Phoenix picks up another kill.
Oh man, the Safeguard just survived the auto attack, but Piltover Peacemaker just in time for Holy Phoenix. But that Solar Flare was so good in that trade, but Holy Phoenix is already back in lane and they stuck around a little too long. The early death timers are not enough to be sticking around that far out in lane after so many engagements, and neither team will get the position for the Dragon here after a very back and forth engagement in what is turning out to be a very back and forth game.
Yeah, looks like Warlight's going to be pursuing. Holy Phoenix gets shut down by the Tibbers coming out, and that bleed should be enough. In fact, Holy Phoenix takes it down even in the retreat.
Chasing through a large minion wave is not the best idea when you don't have enough wards up to be able to make sure that Annie and the support just isn't there. And that will open up the Dragon area here as nobody from Pulse is around to react.
Getting chunked down very quickly, and that will be the first dragon falling to Dark Passage. So let's take stock of some of the other lanes, because we've been focusing on so much of the action. Already 11 kills in 10 minutes is quite a bloodthirsty game, but mid lane, however, LeBlanc not doing too well on farm, which is sometimes to be expected. LeBlanc is sometimes quite difficult to farm with, especially against someone like Gragas. I believe in the Challenger Coke series yesterday, we saw Gragas have like 400 CS at 30 minutes. It was insane.
Yeah, that was the LMQ, the Chinese.
Yeah,
team,
it was.
with their insane lane mechanics and their ability to farm. But 760 is in train.
He is indeed. Crystal Meth comes in from the side. Sultan Battery used. Kickers is coming from the counter gang. Won't be able to pick up a kill, but will be able to save NIQ from his death.
My mic cut out in the middle of the word danger there, so it sounded like he was taking a train. But Kickers is, trying to keep Naru on his toes in that middle lane, but 760 just takes so much damage in every engagement. However, he is up heavily in CS, 81 to 55, and Naru spent a lot of time down in that bottom lane in those earlier engagements. So there is a couple of 100 gold difference between the two.
Yeah, and it is already starting to open up. So in the top lane, the lane has definitely stabilized in favor of Jokies, and in fact has got the CS advantage, which is a little interesting because you'd think the early game, or like the first couple levels as well, like Renekton will thrive, but he's actually doing a lot better against Fabulous into the next couple levels on top of that. So maxing the Inspire, which makes a lot of sense. It's usually Inner Flame which gets maxed first and then the W last, but he's not having a good time. Again the engage and again the chunk.
You can see Jokies just is not able to trade yet. He's got that Spectre's Cowl to try and survive through some of that, but without him using Dominus and going all in, it's going to be difficult for him to poke back and forth. There's the Dominus.
Yeah, he's going to go for that all in. Flash has been used and the Ignite has come down. He's going to go for the dive and is slowly grinding down the Karma, cutting around the turret. That's not where you want to be going when you have that much CC.
Oh dear, that's not a great play there. That really highlights why Karma is such a versatile champion, and as we've said, a lot of the players will pretty much say she's got so much utility that it gives her everything that a champion needs.
In the mid lane we had a small scrap with NIQ picking up the kill onto Naru. Did take the 50-50 chance when he went for the split. Again, Crystal Meth jumps over the wall. Kicker's still looking to be aggressive. Blue buff will be spawning somewhat soon. Won't be able to pick up that kill, but definitely bullying him out of his own jungle.
And I'm starting to wonder whether Pulse have got to a point where these mid-game fights are just going to go away from them because of the damage here that's going to be on to Dark Passage. Karma's already finished the Morellonomicon and a blasting one, so already putting out a fair amount of damage with those inner fires. And LeBlanc has a needlessly large rod. There's an engagement in the bottom.
Yeah, Solar Flare comes down. Woolite has been locked up. Jumps back with a 90 caliber net. The barrier has been popped and still the ace in the hole comes through. Lands onto a Lennox. Meanwhile in the mid lane we had the kill onto LeBlanc from Kickers. We'll be using Fabulous as an escape route. All the mechanics. Jumps to a ward. We'll be getting out safely.
Yeah, really nice. Managed to break the tether on that focus resolve, of course, is just realizing that Dark Passage are running a fairly tether-based team here. You look at the tether on Karma and LeBlanc, and then, there's kind of a pseudo-tether onto Vi as you use a Sultan Battery. So, fairly easy to spot their targets if they land the tethers.
Yeah, we'll call it the tether team. I mean, it's kind of going a bit far when you talk about Assault and Battery, but we'll take it for this one. But
I stopped before mentioning Ace in the Hole.
Sort of a tether. I mean, it doesn't lock them down, but it kills them, which is basically the same thing.
Sounds legit. Okay, so let's take stock of where we are in the game. Although we've had a lot of aggression out of Dark Passage, it's actually Pulse eSports that have got themselves a gold lead. It's because of the turret they've taken down and also some of the lane CS that they have. You again, look in the middle lane, there's a couple of 100 gold difference between the two. Yes, Dark Passage got the first dragon, but Naru is in trouble again.
NIQ constantly landing these combos. That's gonna be enough with the Ignite. It didn't even require the last tick. And again, top going toe-to-toe. And bottom Kickers is getting absolutely chunked. The E comes out from Holy Phoenix, does not quite pick up that kill.
And Pulse just have done a good job of staying consistent in their lanes. Yes, Renekton's been somewhat losing out in the trades against Karma. Did pick himself up a kill earlier, but has kept himself even on CS. And if he can do that and pretty much hold that lane fairly even, the global gold that they got from the tower will outweigh that earlier dragon. So here's another engage.
And again, Lennox lands another perfect Zenith Blade onto Holy Phoenix. That Lightslinger will pick up that kill. Culling comes through and doesn't pick up the Annie, but again, another kill and another great engage by Elendix.
It looks like Pulse is starting to find their groove here. Dragon is up in just over 30 seconds, and they're pushing in this bottom wave. It looks like Annie's in trouble too.
Zenith Blade landing once again, another kill picked up. Eclipse comes through. Now the counter gank from Naru is going to be enough with the Ignite. Jumps back in to try and deal some more damage. Tether lands onto Woolite, one of the many that they have on Dark Passage. And again, action all over the board. Can't keep track of it.
This fight's been long enough for Kickers to get down to the bottom lane.
Woolite picks up the kill to Naru, who gets a little too aggressive. However, he is tanking the turret. I don't think he quite realised. Barrier comes down, flashes out, uses all the summoners to escape from that misstep. Holy Phoenix, meanwhile, picks up the kill to Woolite, who did respawn from base. Crystal Meth has to just stand there and take it. We're going to see some more interaction before Kickers decides to pick this one up.
That's just accepting defeat. Before,
it is.
Yeah. Well, these prolonged engagements just... I don't know how Dark Phoenix are trying to take these, because you see how quickly they get chunked down.
And again, NIQ going for round 7, who just jumps in with barrel roll, is still going after this one. Kickers has found himself across the wall, lands the Q, maybe not onto the right target, even at this stage, and he will burst you down as the support, and I think that's the end of the engagement.
Okay, so a note to Pulse eSports and Dark Passage. Team fights that long, the death timers so far are not long enough for you to do that, especially behind a turret. You will end up dying if you dive that turret. That was such a long team fight that it looked like Annie managed to get back into it nearly 3 times for that engagement.
Yeah, they just didn't want to stop. It was like every team felt they had the advantage if they came back in. If they just do it one more time, we'll win. And that indeed happened. Again, the engagement from Elendix. Solar Flare comes down. Culling comes across. Tibbers gets called. And indeed, it's owner of Annie. Holy Phoenix trying to get out of dodge, but Woolite is on hot pursuit. Crystal Meth unable to save his ally. And Elendix on very low HP, but is still incredibly manly.
We're going for round 14. Here comes LeBlanc, but it looks like Dark Passage just have to be a little bit more careful of when Solar Flare is on and off cooldown. It's only 85 seconds here, and that's not the longest of cooldowns, but it's fairly easy to tell that it's going to be back up. When you see the length of these team fights, they know Dragon is up as well, so they just got to be a bit careful about when they fight.
Yeah, Kickers has actually found himself out fabulous, knocks him backwards into no one. Crystal Meth will lock him up. He will be flashing out. So all those cooldowns have perhaps gone to waste. Nick finds himself the rampage on to Vi, and now Naru in retreat with the rest of his team, but they do have the extra speed up. In fact, Karma doesn't decide to use it, has already used that mantra bonus. With 1 kill down, this should be the Dragon.
Yeah, it should be the Dragon indeed, especially when you consider that it's the Smite that is still down for Dark Passage. They should be able to do this fairly quickly. I was kind of wondering what Kikis was doing going aggressive onto Akama, but he judged his health and his damage and the rest of his team's ability to get to that fight very well, and they came out ahead on that one. Holy Phoenix trying to trade with Renekton in the top.
Yeah, he's found himself in the top lane, but that's not a place you want to be with Joki's farming all game. But now with the support of Annie arriving, the flash will be used. I don't think he can quite catch him in time to land that stun, and indeed he will just back off.
Good rotations there out of Dark Passage, trying to take down more objectives on the map as best as they can. They're yet to put themselves on the turret game, but that rotation up to the top to try and focus that down leaves their bottom tower exposed, and that is now the 3rd tower down in favor of Pulse. So Dark Passage needs to start picking up these objectives, because Pulse are starting to get tanky and are starting to end up winning these mid-game fights.
Over the last couple of minutes, and the fact that these fights have gone on for so long, it has been Pulse gradually getting ahead. Tether will land onto NIQ in the mid lane, and the second Tether from the ultimate, making sure he will stay in place. Lee Sin has reacted, but Naru shuts him down with Distortion.
Yeah, then that's just a case of Dark Passage stacking quite a few people in that middle lane to make sure that they start picking up kills, but kills aren't really going to be enough for them right now. They need to start taking hard objectives, because if they don't, these fights are just going to be so difficult for them to burst down the members of Pulse that it's not going to go their way.
This is exactly what we were saying in the break before we jumped into this game stress. It's like they're going to find it very difficult if they fall behind. And as it is, their composition is kind of like you nuke one person down and you back off and try and go back in again and nuke another person down. It's a very interesting composition. Kick has found himself Crystal Meth, just again just pushing him out even when he's just trying to get into that river. Holy Phoenix is zoning away the Jokies, or trying to kite him away rather. Kickers comes in from the backside, ward over the wall, and Annie has to use that flash.
It's just a situation where right now LeBlanc's scoreline is pretty much inverted from where they'd like it to be to have the damage. Yes, she's got the Deathfire Grasp and is doing a lot of damage, but a 2 and 4 LeBlanc with 3 assists is not where they want to be at this point in the game. They'd much rather have that LeBlanc have picked up the earlier kills in those bottom lane engagements and be it something like 5 and 2 or some, you know, a far more beneficial stat line than where they are at now, because right now they just don't have the damage to really punch through Pulse's resistances. I mean, you look at Leona, who as a support, normally you'd gun for a support because they tend to be the easy target, but with an Aegis of the Legion and a Sightstone on top of that Eclipse shield, she's going to have so much resistance that you aren't going to get through that very quickly.
Yeah, like right now, Dark Passage are just looking very flimsy, and you would expect that from their lineup, exactly what they've been picking. But they're even more flimsy because they haven't had the opportunity to itemize anywhere towards tanky items, apart from Vi, who won't be acting as a front line and won't be acting as a live member of their team. Jokies and his ally will be slowly taking him down. Oh, the face plant, and will be taken down.
And you can see even the difference between Kikis' ability to soak damage there and Crystal's ability to soak damage. They pretty much have almost similar items. You look at the Ancient Golem, but Kikis has that Giant Spelt rather than the Ruby Crystal. And that extra gold from earlier is going to go a long way, but it won't help him against Naru.
Jukes him out. Yeah, jukes him out of the distortion, doesn't land it, kicks him backwards, and doesn't even have to use the flash.
Funnily enough, that's actually the amount he survived was the difference between a Ruby Crystal and a Giant Spell. It was 200 health. He
picked that one up. NIQ again landing a perfect barrel. Oh god, the damage from barrel roll as well is insane. Oh, picking up that kill. I don't think Naru expected that.
No, I don't think Naru expected that at all. The other thing is Naru went aggressive on Kikis without Ignite available, and really want to go aggressive with your full combo available. I mean, Ignite's a fairly big part of picking up kills onto tankier champions because of the way that it will deal true damage.
And Helendix lands yet another great grab onto Holy Phoenix, but the counter gank this time comes in for Crystal Meth. Culling comes through. The ace of the hole blocked by Helendix, and all these ultimates have come down, and that's given enough time for NIQ to react. He is walking into this fight. Takes a Vault Breaker, takes a headshot. Lennox doesn't land the Zenith Blade. I'm not sure if they have enough damage to deal with this. Would Holy Phoenix drops so low, and the Piltover doesn't quite connect. This has allowed enough time for Kikis to come into the fray, with Annie just trying to get out of here. Tempest into the cripple. Crystal Meth is so low, but the Assassinate comes in from Naru, who has respawned. And Kikis is built quite tanky, but very little damage on top of that. Tempest into the cripple. Ward jump is available to him. Double kill. Meanwhile, his team is just being eaten alive. And IQ, lands the huge barrel. Picks up the kill onto Annie. Triple kill for Naru. Jumps over the wall looking to find his fourth. But he does have to wait for those cooldowns and has very little mana available to him. NIQ is looking very scary. Doesn't land the E. He's got the jukes. Jumps over the wall. NIQ. Just falls to Naru, who picks up his unofficial Quadra.
This is yet another example of these teams just fighting for far too long. I mean, Pulse had the advantage there. They'd picked up a kill and had really turned that away and stopped themselves from dying, and they overstayed, kept chasing, tried to pick up more. And Naru was already back, and that's where LeBlanc is really going to be effective. Is yes, okay, if you can pick one up in a team fight, that's great, but if you can come out in late to a team fight with full health and mana, everything available, you can burst 2, 3 people down, and you saw that with a triple kill there on very easy targets out of Pulse.
The funny thing is, both of these teams have, like, the ability to clean up when coming back in, like, a third or a fourth time, as we've been seeing. And these teams, if they're able to duke out of that burst, because, like, some of it is skill shots, and that's what we're seeing from Gragas, because they have so much time to maneuver, because these fights are so long, then we're seeing, like, the just on-target skills of Naru. They're not going to miss because they're on target, but with the Gragas barrels, then they are going to miss because they're always being duped from the high mobility, and that's what Dark Passage bring to the table. And this is going to be another Dragon falling to Pulse, but Dark Passer definitely not out of it. NIQ drops so low. Second part of the tether doesn't quite come to fruition and doesn't pick up that kill.
But here's the problem about that turn of events there for Dark Passage. They picked up a lot of kills there. They picked up so many that they should have been able to get objectives from it, but their team composition is not that good at picking up objectives unless they're all 5. There is no real way that without every member of this team that they can either take an engagement when they're trying to back away or siege anything, because they really need a lot of protection for Caitlyn.
Yep, and Jokers has found himself back Caitlyn and just takes him down by himself. Donmas has been popped. Double buffs on that Crocodile. Crystal Meth heading around the side, but won't be able to duel him one-on-one.
And Pulse, on the other hand, are pretty confident when it comes to splitting their team. They know that they don't require Renekton at all times because of the amount of tankiness that Gragas and Lee Sin have and the ability to disengage by using the explosive cask. However, Jokers is free to engage in the top lane, provided it's even.
Yeah, and Jokers knows the dangers of jumping under the turret, but he doesn't really need to go for the tower dive because NIQ will take him down instantly.
It's just a little bit tricky here for Dark Passage. They cannot send somebody on their own to a lane to defend against Renekton. They have to send 2, and if Pulse send a second one as well, they can pretty much fight any 2 members of Dark Passage here.
Yeah, they've run out of minions, but they are very tanky. They might see the follow. Lennox has been caught by the Tibbers. Not quite the target you want to be jumping onto. We spoke about the extra stats that Lennox gets from that Eclipse when it's at max rank in the break stress.
Yeah, and those stats really just paying dividends there, as you saw Elendex pretty much take a massive combination of damage there from Dark Passage, but you can see that with that combo, yes, okay, Naru didn't put any damage into that, and that's a big source of the damage, but if you cannot burst down a support, how is Holy Phoenix going to survive this?
Holy Phoenix is not having a good time in that area of the map. This is the second time he's been caught out. Kickers find himself the support, and the bot lane has fallen.
And the problem in this game is, yes, LeBlanc has 6 kills, but she suffered in farm here from all of the roaming that was forced out of her early. You need to be able to roam and pick up kills, and they're looking to do that now. Crystal
Meth looking for the re-engage. Tether comes down. NIQ locked in place. Can't do much else. Kickers finds himself a kill. 500 gold goes to Jokers. That might be the end of that engagement. 3-1 advantage to Pulse.
And again, only an assist there for LeBlanc. And okay, there was that passage earlier where they got a good few kills onto LeBlanc, but I have to feel that it could have been too little too late here because Pulse have taken too many objectives and have too much farm here in that middle lane that it's just a little bit late out of Dark Passage.
Definitely falling out of their hands. Dark Passage, it's 28 minutes into this game. It's not a short game, but their kind of early game pressure and how their team operates has not really done too well. They are still very flimsy and they just can't take Pulse in a 5-on-5. And even when they split themselves up, Renekton has been farming all this time. He's actually spent a lot of time in the top lane. He's already on his 3rd item and completed Ninja Tabai.
Yeah, he's done pretty well here to have survived that lane against Karma. Keeping himself even on CS really allowed him to build the items so that when they did start rotating around, he was tanky enough to be able to survive in lane against anybody. We saw him trying to trade against Caitlyn and not really going too well as Annie came in, but every time he survived. And really, that's one of the focal points, is just how consistent Pulse have been.
And this is exactly what Crystal Meth can do with Naru on his team. Just jump in, Vault Breaker into the Sultan battery, and that's all you need to secure that kill for Naru.
Yeah, Walliter has to be a little bit careful here, and so does Kickers.
Yeah, anyone who's near LeBlanc needs to be careful, and he will be taken down to 50% HP. Elendix looking to get this engage off. The barrel comes in, that's just Comma disappearing.
And Joki's now in the top lane again, is in that 1v2. This time he really does have to run because there's a lot of damage.
Yeah, Dominus has been used, wood over the wall, perfect from his support of Annie, and Holy Phoenix just taking a minion over the wall, kick us 1 versus 2, but the cavalry is coming in. Tibus is already down, but doesn't look like Annie's going to escape from this one. We'll see what Holy Phoenix can do, but Elendix is already in hot pursuit, jumping over the wall. You ain't going anywhere, Holy Phoenix, and taken down by kickers.
And again, every time Dark Passage takes something on the map, in the form of a kill, Pulse answer with 2 or 3 or an objective or something that's just worth more to them than they're giving away to Dark Passage. And it's just going to be, it's already too much of a problem for Dark Passage. Their gold generation just isn't there right now. They're constantly getting shoved in and having to burst down waves with more of their damage. So a lot of that gold is not going to go to LeBlanc because the wave clear isn't amazing there. And it's just meaning that there's not enough gold generation.
Elendix has been doing work this game. Crystal Meth has been caught out. Gragas Ball comes through, but Naru's burst is on point. Picks up that kill, 1 for 0.
Yeah, in those situations, Dark Passage are going to be able to fight that because that's just overextending from Pulse. I mean, you really can't do that into a LeBlanc, but this is a lot more favorable.
Yeah, and that's also overextending, and if you don't know which clone it is, kill both of them.
Yeah, that's a very good point there. Of course, you do get that the double shot out of Lucian, so if they're both low enough, you can do that in one
Shoot both
attack.
of them. Doesn't seem to be an issue. So Annie just heading around the side, finds himself the Wraiths, but 28-17 is the current scoreline. Huge advantage in terms of goal, but it doesn't seem to matter to the team of Dark Passage. Warlight looks like he's going to get caught out. Crystal Meth follows through, and Lennox comes in to try and save his ally. And he is still very tanky, uses the ultimate to try and save himself this time. Doesn't quite happen. Holy Phoenix picks himself up another kill. And with the almost 10k deficit, or 10k before those 2 kills went down, it doesn't seem like that's making the blindest bit of difference to Dark Passage.
Okay, so Dark Passage that time were able to take an objective, but again, Pulse have done the same.
And then IQ comes in, blows up 2 people instantly. Double kill comes out. Fabulous doesn't look like he's going to get out of this one. Slowly being ground down. And the barrel has come off cooldown. Triple kill for NIQ.
I have to feel that if Pulse hadn't overextended a couple of times here with Wooliter going aggressive in the middle lane, they would be even further ahead than they are right now. It's a very, very difficult game here for Dark Passage.
And they're just being scattered up and constantly taken down. Naru chunked to 50% with 1 barrel roll. Annie is just going to be taken down. NIQ just wandering about the map picking up kills as he pleases.
And I think Pulse here, they can decide to go for Baron, they can take more towers. Baron is the smarter option, they're right there, so why not?
Yeah, no travel time.
Yeah, not exactly the furthest way. And I don't think LeBlanc is exactly the best champion for stealing Baron away. I mean, she does have the mobility to do it, but she's got to get in and not die.
Yeah, and with NIQ just over the wall and him being able to just land the Q and land the body slam will take you very low. Even someone like Crystal Meth is supposed to be your tankiest member. Solar Flare comes out. Culling comes across the wall as well. But this is a very secure Baron. Naru is still hanging around. This time finds himself Jokies, who is trying to run after him. But Naru is quite maneuverable. I'm not sure that chasing this one down is the best of options when there's an inhibitor available.
Yeah, I think Pulse here should be focusing a little bit more on the middle lane. They've committed 2 people down to try and cut off LeBlanc. They are starting to back away now, but they took a lot of time down in that bottom area, and I just feel like Pulse are toying with Dark Passage a little bit here.
Yeah, it was unnecessary, and Joki's just gonna tank the turret. He's already back to full health again, so it's not like turrets are affecting Pulse too much at this stage, and if they do want to go for those engagements under turret, they can definitely do that, but there's still AoE stuns, there's still those tethers to keep them in place.
We look at Gragas being 13 and 4, and it's just so much damage that's going to come from that explosive cast. You can see finishes off a Banshee's Veil there, and that's going to protect them even more. LeBlanc's going to have a very difficult time here from killing anybody, because if she can't get if even one of her abilities is prevented from getting off, you don't have enough damage to burst somebody down unless it's Lucian. And we've seen Wooliter overextend a little bit, but I think when it comes to sieging and team fights, Wooliter's positioning is far better than his being too far out in lane positioning. So I think the time has come and gone almost for Naru to burst pretty much everybody but Wooliter on the team for Pulse.
Yeah, and Wooliter, I don't think he's really going to be out of position, as you said, that Banshee's fail. Yeah, I mean, that would completely change the dynamics of the team fight, but I feel like they have enough damage elsewhere, with Renekton going for the more offensive build this time round, Ravenous Hydra into the Black Cleaver. Sometimes we just see, yeah, Ravenous Hydra picked up by itself, but he has opted for more damage. He does have 302 farm after all, which is pretty good for a top laner at this stage in the game. Naru just hanging around the side, seeing if he can find himself a pick, but his Banshee's Veils are making it very difficult for him to do so, and there are very few methods of them popping that Banshee's Veil before an engagement. Culling comes across, just a couple of ticks, chunks Naru down to about 30% HP, and even lower than that. Crystal Meth does not want to be hanging around.
And Kikis will go aggressive.
Yeah, Tether comes through. Oh, the damage from NIQ. That's one combo. Will be taking Fabulous out of the fight.
And now Pulse have the numbers advantage here as well. Wooliter is tanking the turret. That's not exactly what they want here, because Naru will be back and available very shortly. And Pulse now focusing on their first inhibitor turret of the game.
Yeah, it doesn't look like Dark Passage want this fight. They're 4 versus 5. Their playmaker of Fabulous is down in the Death Chamber and 6 feet under. They're going to take this inhibitor with no contest. And DP needs to do something, because at the moment they're just kind of hanging around and doing nothing.
Now they may take this fight.
Naru jumps forwards, tries to get the burst down. Culling comes across the wall and pushes him back to base. Looks like Home Guards are going to be the item of choice, or the upgrade of choice on the boots at this stage in the game. Inhibitors going to be dropping the second inhibitor. In fact, the Solar Flare comes down. The Gragas barrels are off of cooldown, coming down in quick succession. There's one. There's the second falling to Leona. Naru comes in. Fabulous has come back from the Death Chamber, only to be put back into it, it seems. Jokeys has gone very far forwards. He's still so tanky with 2 damage items. And Holy Phoenix, Fabulous are jumping back into this fight, knocking back Holy Phoenix into his team. Jokeys is still alive despite being sitting in the middle of their team. 4 kills for 2. In the meanwhile, Wooliter and NIQ were taken down. There's the A's from the Crocodile. Inhibitor turrets have gone down. The inhibitors and the Nexus turrets are falling. This is going to be game for Pulse Esports.
Yeah, and the story of this game is just how good Elendic's Solar Flares have been. Every time we saw him use them, they were on point, getting multiple members of Dark Passage, and they just became far too tanky for the Dark Passage team composition to overcome.
I don't know how many times in this game we've seen Lennox just land a Solar Flare into a Zenith Blade. Those engagements were basically just what won them the game. Even in laning phase, and as soon as he was out of laning phase, he was doing that to everyone else on the team. So, might be something they want to keep away from them. We were talking about that Annie and Leona being more of a skill matchup, but definitely that went the way of Elendix. But anyway, guys, we'll be jumping to a quick commercial break. When we get back, we'll be in the second game of Dark Passage versus Pulse Esports. But stick around, because we have more great League of Legends action up for today.